Though a Mandalorian could easily kill you with their bare hands, their impressive weaponry certainly helped. What's up, MetaNerdz? This video will cover all of the weapons used by the Mandalorians over the years. From conquering the deadly beasts that roamed their homeworld, namely the Mythosaur, and later waging wars against the Jedi and Sith alike, this all cultivated a warrior's mentality amongst their people, and they've been ruled by the best of their warriors for millennia. Despite their relatively small numbers by the Imperial era, they've always had a massive impact on galactic history, all with the help of their incredible arms, armor, and tech. So we'll cover all of it in both Legends and Canon, multiple millennia of violent history, but let's start with one of the most important weapons from Canon. Thousands of years before the Battle of Yavin, Tari Vizsla became the first Mandalorian to join the Jedi Order, and created the Darksaber, a unique lightsaber with a more sword-like design and black marbled blade. He used this blade to be the first to unite the many warring Mandalorian tribes. Since then, it has been a symbol of leadership, being wielded by whoever currently rules the Mandalorians, Force-sensitive or not. We've seen it in the hands of Pre Vizsla, Darth Maul, Sabine Wren, Bo-Katan Kryze, and currently Moff Gideon, who likely acquired it after he participated in the Siege of Mandalore. Sometime after Vizsla's passing, Mandalore the Great led the united Mandalorians to wage war against the Jedi.
The songs of eons past tell of battles between Mandalore the Great and an order of sorcerers called Jedi.
While the war ended with the desolation of Mandalore, confining its inhabitants to sealed dome cities, they did mount a successful attack on the Jedi Temple, where they retrieved the Darksaber.
This lightsaber was stolen from your Jedi Temple by my ancestors during the fall of the Old Republic.
This war would come to shape much of the future of the Mandalorians in canon. In order to fight their greatest opponent yet, they had to develop a combat style that utilized a unique and varied arsenal with ranged weapons and hand-to-hand combat techniques. Beskar armor was also first developed during this period, and it was of great use against the Jedi. The ore could be turned into Beskar steel, and was found only on Mandalore and its moon Concordia, and it was resistant to lightsabers. This armor was worn over a body glove or jumpsuit, and almost always had a distinctive chest plate made of 4 separate Beskar plates, as well as a helmet which retained the distinct T-shaped visors of the most ancient of the Mandalorians. Mando armor was usually painted to represent the wearer's clan or allegiance, but Sabine Wren says that she painted hers herself after it was passed down to her through multiple generations. Among the weapons the Mandalorians developed to fight the Jedi was a concealed retractable vibroblade in the glove, which could sometimes be used to parry a Jedi attack or surprise an opponent who thought that they were giving up and that they were unarmed. Mandalorians of the Clone Wars era favored the Westar 34 and 35, which were Mandalorian designed and produced blaster pistols, and famously could be dual-wielded, as we saw with Jango Fett and Pre Vizsla respectively, while the unidentified Deathwatch Carbine seems to be a scaled-up version of the Westar 35. In Legends, we also saw the Westar M5 blaster rifle, a modular system that was used by bounty hunters and later the Empire, but most notably by the Legends ARC Trooper Alpha 17. Many may remember Darth Vader's iconic no disintegration line, which was directed at Boba Fett, and after all these years we finally see what he meant by this. The M-Bun Disruptor rifle would instantly turn biological matter into a pile of ash, a weapon that was actually banned by the Empire. Now during the Clone Wars, this once proud warrior race had become pacifist under the leader of Satine Kryze, exiling any militant Mandalorians to the moon of Concordia, which is where Pre Vizsla formed Deathwatch, a secret order which intended to maintain the culture's ancient warrior code. Throughout the Clone Wars, they were seen as enemies, even terrorists by many, but they were also known to rescue populations from the CIS army. As we see, Deathwatch would rescue the child that would grow up to be known as the Mandalorian, and we see them wielding a weapon that's similar but not identical to Boba Fett's EE-3 blaster rifle, and so it's likely a earlier or related model. Perhaps the most important part of the arsenal of the Mandalorians were their combat vambraces, which were their wrist guards that contained various weapons while still keeping their hands free. Some could fire these explosive darts, and there was even an attachment that would make a small personal shield. The most popular weapon used in these vambraces were the wrist-mounted flamethrowers, aka the ZX miniature flame projector, but it could also house whipcord launchers, and both were very difficult for Jedi to counter. Their lightsabers could of course not deflect fire, and they could be bound by a successful whipcord shot, allowing the Mando to either close in for a kill or bring them in hot, just in case they had a rather expensive bounty. However, many of these vambraces also had other attachments like concealed wrist blasters used by the Fets, or the mini saw blade launchers used by Pre Vizsla. Perhaps the most deadly were the Whistling Birds, tiny homing micro-missiles which were used by the Mando to instantly take out 4 stormtroopers who had surrounded him. But they were very limited due to their use of Beskar.
Use them sparingly, for they are rare.
which allowed them to punch through armor, but of course was increasingly harder to find, and so far it's the only known canon weapon that's made from this ore. As for tech, their magnetized boots and jetpacks also gave them amazing maneuverability, sometimes better than even a Jedi. While the exact models were of course refined over time, during the late Republic and Imperial eras they were known to use the Z6 jetpack, which included a back-mounted rocket launcher, and was effective against everything from infantry to even shooting down starships. And as we saw with Obi-Wan and Satine, they could actually circle back to track their target, though how exactly they locked on is unknown. And then there was the lighter JT-12 variant. Those trained in the school of the Rising Phoenix used jetpacks most effectively, as they did require a lot of practice and training to control. Now of course, Beskar is an incredibly strong metal and the pride of the Mandalorians, so why didn't they make more weapons out of it? Well, they did, but only in Legends. The Beskad was the traditional sword of the Mandalorians. It was under 2 feet long, but made of a hefty Beskar blade, and so it could be used to bash down an enemy's defenses, as there are very few materials that are actually stronger than Beskar. These are made much like real-life katanas, with the metalsmith folding the Beskar many times to create a very strong blade with a razor-sharp edge. And fittingly, they carry much of the significance of their real-world counterparts, being a weapon that was prized in their culture due to the skill needed to craft it, and seen as a source of pride for hundreds of years, even as more advanced technology came about. While much like the Darksaber in canon, in Legends it would be the battle axe that symbolized the leader of Mandalore. Mandalore the Ultimate would craft one from the wreckage of a Republic capital ship, and inexpugnable to be exact, with the head being made of metal sheets, but also lined with cortosis for a lightsaber blocking effect. This was a modernized version of the ancient mythosaur axe, which originally was made from the calcified bones of the terrifying mythosaurs that once ruled Mandalore, before the warriors made them extinct and turned them into the galaxy's most feared and recognized sigil. There was also the Crush Gaunt, or in Mandalorian, the Shukuruk, a heavy glove covered in Beskar plates that significantly increased the wearer's hand strength. It was said that someone wearing the Crush Gaunt would be able to crush metal, rock, or bone in their hand. Because of this, they were often used to easily snap an opponent's neck, or even could be used to catch and hold a lightsaber blade in the wearer's hand. Something that surely would have been a shock to any Jedi unlucky enough to go head-to-head with a Mandalorian wearing these gauntlets. But despite their amazing arsenal, they could not hold out against the sheer numbers of the Empire. Thus they were beaten into submission after the Siege of Mandalore, in which most of their forces were wiped out. Moff Gideon knows that to the Mandalorians, this is known as the Night of 1,000 Tears.
Songs of the Siege of Mandalore, when gunships outfitted with similar ordnance laid waste to fields of Mandalorian recruits.
We know little of this night besides the fact that it led to the seizure of most of their Beskar and drove out most of the remaining Mandalorian warriors into hiding. Gar Saxon, a Mandalorian who joined the Imperials, was installed as the Imperial Viceroy of Mandalore.
Worse, they're traitors, Mandalorians who serve the Empire.
Saxon also led the Imperial Commandos, a highly elite group of Mandalorians who swore service to the Empire. They wore sleeker, all-white armor that blended the traditional Mando aesthetics with the traditional Stormtrooper armor design. But interestingly, it was still made from the reforged Beskar captured during the sieges, and they wielded traditional Westar Blaster Carbines. Since Mandalorian training was of course far better than anything the Empire could offer, they were among the most elite of the Empire's forces. Before them, during the Clone Wars, was the Mandalorian Protectors, also known as the Royal Guards that were meant to protect the ruler of Mandalore, and try and maintain a balance in their warrior culture. They can be seen in the Clone Wars protecting Duchess Satine before Deathwatch gained control. They were also brought in to train clones, much like in Legends, and sometimes even fought alongside them. Years later, in order to protect themselves from decimation, their leader Fen Rao reluctantly signed a treaty with the Empire, swearing loyalty. And here we can see that the Mandalorians weren't just excellent warriors, they were also good pilots, as when they first met, the Protectors were able to wipe out a squad of A-Wings and nearly killed the rebel leader Hera Syndulla. During the Clone Wars, their primary starfighter was the Comer class, also known as the Gauntlet Fighter, and these are also prominently used by Deathwatch, and these are manufactured by their native Mandel motors. Darth Maul would fly his own Comer class fighter named the Night Brother for about 17 years, coming from his takeover of Mandalore near the end of the Clone Wars. During the reign of the Empire, the Protectors would use the similar Fang class fighter, as they were one of the few people to secure a contract from the Empire that allowed them to produce these starfighters openly, and they worked in some improvements over the Comer. Not only would the whole wing engine assembly pivot to allow for vertical takeoff and landing, but it could also rotate during flight, and allowing the wing-mounted laser cannons to be fired with minimal reposition of the ship. So that's it for their armor, arms, tech, and even starfighters over the years. But you definitely want to hear these cool facts and behind-the-scenes stuff. Capitalizing on the look of one of the most loved characters from the original trilogy, George Lucas wanted to tie the clone troopers to Jango and Boba Fett. and so that's what inspired the look of the Phase 1 Clone Trooper armor. There's tons of debate over whether or not the Fets should be true Mandalorians. At once, Lucas definitely implied that, and later said that he didn't want them to be so. And in the Clone Wars episode, The Mandalorian Plot, it stated that he was never a member of the Mandalorian culture. But keep in mind, these are other Mandalorians deciding who is not a true Mandalorian, as there was this tension between becoming peace-loving people and staying warriors. The Mandalorian's Ambon Disruptor Rifle is based on the weapon Boba Fett was carrying during his first appearance. Not in Empire, or even in the New Hope re-release, but in the Star Wars Christmas special. And so you could say this is also the first appearance of Mandalorian armor. But that's it for the Mandalorian Armory. If you want to connect with us on social media, find ways that you can help support this channel for free, or check out our Patreon and PayPal. Be sure to check out the links in the description. Special shout out to our supporters over on Patreon, especially our $25 tier, Andrew Ban, Black Phoenix, Feed Me Kittens, and Seraph Diaz. But most important of all, remember, there's no such thing as a disarmed Mandalorian, and the Force will be with you, always.